So let me pull up what we're going to talk about here. So I'm going to pull up some tweets here. Just going to read them off. It's not to just to talk about what people talk about on Twitter, but this is going to lead into more of a broader discussion here, just about what happened with the election, and just about um, you know, how that kind of ties into everything, pop culture, how much it ties into politics there. So you got this tweet right here, and I'm going to pull up some other examples of some other tweets. So you got this one right here, where it says, and this is a response to a person who this is a quote tweet. So the first person here says the right wing radicalization of high school and college age men is truly one of the biggest crises in the U.S. and it goes nearly completely unaddressed there. And then the person quote tweets it and says that I want to make this very clear. Young men have nothing. Literally, we have nothing. No future prospects. Most don't have skills. Most don't have partners, all for reasons outside of our control. All we had was our hobbies, and we couldn't even be left alone to have that. And then for years, all our lives, from every institution, from every piece of pop culture, the message has been beaten into us that we are the root of evil, that we are irredeemable and privileged there. The only escape was pop culture of the past, where we weren't hated, but even there, we had no refuge, and we're given the opportunity to finally, many of us, for the first time, to maybe just maybe get a future, get peace. And you tell us we're radicalized. Most men are really, really low maintenance. We don't need much at all. Just a hug now and then, a hobby, a challenge, and be left alone. Most of the time is more than enough for the vast majority of men, but that was too much to ask for. You have that. And I got another tweet there I want to pull up, but just to start with that one is first. What's kind of your initial reaction to that?
Um, Frankly, I think it's completely pathetic. Well, the first question I would ask this person is, he mentioned, I think in like the third or fourth tweet down is, and now we have a chance to get something for ourselves. And of course, the question is like, what does voting for Trump or Republican, how does that accomplish anything? What is, let's say, okay, he wins and now he's in the White House, he's going to do stuff. How is any of this going to fix anything in your life? And the answer is it's not going to. Sadly, it's not going to help one iota. The problems what he is describing are issues that I do talk a lot about in the male dating video about, the male loneliness epidemic, men struggling with relationships, feelings of purpose. However, this is what sort of happened is, when we're trying to fix this, people talk about the male loneliness epidemic. When people address this, it has to be a two-part process. One, there has to be an acknowledgement of the struggles that young men face. That is what I was trying to do with the male dating video, which is basically like, hey, as a guy who has been here, I hear you. I know exactly what you're going through, exactly how you feel, the struggles you face with women, dating, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I understand that there are no, like, outside of like, bullshit pickup artist or, red pill stuff, there is no practical advice for dudes on how to approach dating. So this is my attempt to reach across the aisle and let you know that we hear you. And that's good. That's great. I think that is a very, very important piece of the puzzle. The issue is, the next step is like, okay, we've acknowledged the issues that you are facing. Now it's time to put that aside for now. And now we have to make an attempt to address what is going on. So if you're a guy who doesn't feel you have a purpose, we need to sit down and we need to discuss, okay, what do you like to do? What do you feel good doing? What are you good at? And start to form a game plan. Okay, you want a relationship. Okay, are you overweight? Okay, let's get you to the gym. Do you dress like shit? Okay, let's save up and get you some decent clothes, make you look good. Do you actually interact with other people ever? Or do you just sit in your house or on the computer all day? No? Okay, great. Let's join some clubs, find some hobbies, volunteer, go to a bar and try talking to 10 women and get blown the fuck out 10 times in a row. I promise you, it's not as bad as you think, and it's a very valuable lesson for dudes to realize that asking a girl for her phone number and her saying no is nothing bad's going to happen. It's not the end of the world, and you're gonna feel better about yourself that you had the confidence to do so. Um, there has to be this sort of methodical, okay, we've addressed the issues that you're facing, but now as particularly as like, talking about like as a young man, you kind of have to, for lack of a better term, man up a bit. You have to make the steps to improve your life. But it seems like what's happening is that a lot of these guys, and that tweet I think is a perfect representation of it, these guys have completely checked out. They refuse to sort of take any steps to improve their life. And not only that, but they have gotten to a point where they have completely refused to accept any accountability. So if I don't know if you want to pull the tweet back up, but the
Yeah.
first thing
Good.
he says is that men have no skills, men have no partners, and then he adds, for reasons completely out of our control.
Yeah, that's the very first
Um,
one. Yeah, that's the
yeah,
start.
all for reasons outside of our control. This is that part right there is like the death rattle. That is once you, again, dudes, I understand it's hard to talk to women. I understand the issues you face. I understand what's stacked against you. But once you have accepted that or have internalized the belief that the reason that you don't have a girlfriend or you're not attracted to women is out of your control completely, it's over. I don't
Mm.
like what do I say to that person? It's like telling a fat person, it's like, okay, I'm overweight and I'm not happy. It's like, okay, well, we can go to the gym and we can watch your habits. We can check your eating. It's like, well, no, there's nothing I can do. I'm just fat. It's like, well, no, that's not true. There's a lot you can do. I recognize that it's going to be a long journey. It's going to be rough. It's going to be hard, but there are things we can do. Um,
Mm.
but if you even refuse to acknowledge that anything is in your control, um, at that point, and this is sort of where I am with a lot of young men, where it's like, I, I don't want to, I don't want to just like throw my hands up and be like, well, fuck off then. But if you're not even going to make any attempt, not even make an attempt, even acknowledge that there are things that you can improve, or that there are actions you can take to improve your life, um, I I just don't know what to say to those people. It's a completely, as I said, I think it's a very pathetic attitude to have, especially as a dude.
Mm. So the reason I bring up this, not to, like I said, not to just talk about stuff on Twitter there, but I think, like I said, it branches to a larger conversation, and with the recent election and with the election results, and I know they're still kind of parsing through a lot of the data, but with some of the data, it seems like I said, the young divide really showed up in this election, much like what people talked about during these recent years of how the younger generation, the Gen Z generation, younger women are going more left and then younger men are going more right. And then the reason why younger men pick Trump. And then when I was out tabling just recently, I work for a political organization there. And then, just talking to a guy, and then he says, like, well, I got friends who, are into Trump. And he says, like, he asked them, it's like, well, why are they into Trump? He says, like, well, why are you into Trump? And they really didn't have an answer. He said that most of it just was like, well, just yeah. I mean, Trump, he's cool. That's the guy.
It's
And
a it's a lash. I don't want to be as well. No, you have to call a spade at some time. In most of these cases, for a lot of these young guys, it's just a lashing out. It is a because again, like you said, you ask the person, okay, I understand all these issues that you're facing as a young man. How is voting for Trump or the Republicans, even a lot of the red pill dudes, even like Andrew Tate or all this stuff? Again, a lot of those guys do, and this is why they're so attractive to young men. A lot of these guys do correctly point out the issues the young men face: loneliness, isolation, struggles, dealing, interacting with women, and that's why a lot of guys gravitate to them. But then but then you ask them, actually sit down, like, what is Andrew Tate actually telling you to do that's going to improve your life? Or Joe Rogan or Trump or any of these guys. It's they're giving you part A, but like, what is the part B that you think is they're going to give you? And I'm really worried that a lot of these dudes are gonna find out. They're gonna, a year goes by. Well, consider Trump was a. This is sort of like the big joke where it's like Trump was president for 4 years from 2016 to 2020.
Mm.
If you're a dude who's 30, you were in your early 20s when Trump was in office. Okay, so what happened with it? Nothing he did. Like, if you're 30 and you're single and still lonely and can't talk to girls, clearly nothing when he was in office, nothing that he did helped you to gain skills or anything. So what's going on?
Yeah.
And again, if you want to, if there's someone who legitimately has voted for Trump for reasons, again, I think he doesn't have any strong policy positions. I think most of his policies are going to actually hurt the economy. Um, but okay, we can discuss that. But it's really scary, like you pointed out, where a lot of guys are voting for him out of some desire for. I think it's really that they're trying to gain some level of control over their lives. They think that by doing this, it it's going to give me some level of control. Things will get better.
Uh-huh.
But unfortunately, I'm very afraid that, again, I would ask that the guy who tweeted that, like, let's say everything that you're saying is true. What now? What is going to improve this situation? And the answer is that Trump isn't offering you anything.
Yeah. And yeah, when I was speaking to that guy, yeah, like I said, so I think, there's a subsection of people who did vote for him because it's vibes, because it's vibe based and because he triggers the libs and owns the feminist and and he's gonna fight back against in pop culture, and like the person said in the tweet, like, for decades now, we've been treated in media as the root of all evil and all white men are bad and all white men are evil. And the reason that Harris lost is because Harris, you know what I mean. She said that the Dems are saying that white men are bad and evil, and it gets reiterated in pop culture there. And I was just, I went back and forth with somebody. Again, that conversation comes up there online, just about media and wokeness and all that stuff like that. Of like all white men are now portrayed as evil there. One, I say to that is like, one, do you want? I mean, every white guy in every story can't be the hero every time. And two, if you clearly look at media, that's just not the case. And then they say, well, name some male characters there, that white male characters that are, cool or that are, what I mean, a positive representation. And it's like, well, you got characters like Jack Reacher, you got characters like John Wick. You had last year, you had that movie, The Iron Claw, which was very great. That showed a lot of that. You had Oppenheimer there, very complex representations and characters there. So clearly that's not true. And then it seems like most of it is just coming from, because when you say, okay, name some examples of some movies that hate men, and then they'll bring up the same MCU Marvel shit from years ago. They're still talking about Captain Marvel and She-Hulk. And it's like,
That sort of it gives the game away in a way where it's like, if why are we? This is such a yeah, man. This is all the time. It's like every female character. It's like, and then you name female characters from like 8 years ago, and I'm like, well, hang on. Like, even if I agree with you that that's true, it's like, why do we have to go back 8 years? What about yesterday? Or another issue that I have is when people. Oh, actually, you know what? I'll be right back. I'll be 2 seconds. My apologies.
no problem. So yeah, so that's kind of just one thing I would, kind of ask the people there, how do you kind of combat that with the fact that, yeah, I mean, when they say like all this media is doing it and you can name hundreds of movies and shows and that all kind of depict white men as bad, it's like, well, I can probably counter that with also examples of showing white men in a positive light. And then they'll bring up, kind of the examples of like Luke Skywalker or Indiana Jones or James Bond. It's like they ruined those legacy characters and those things. Even though, yes, I did think the Indiana Jones, the last one was bad. I didn't think it was worse than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Actually, I didn't think that was worse. And then they'll say like, well, the Bond movie, they messed up Bond. Actually, I thought No Time to Die was actually pretty good. I actually think that was actually a pretty solid Bond movie. It ended on a good note. And it was better. And that's not even the worst Daniel Craig Bond movie, because the worst Daniel Craig Bond movie is Quantum of Solace. I think that probably is the worst, or actually not Quantum of Solace. Spectre is probably worse, is the worst one. So yeah, they'll name the kind of these figures in media there that are kind of representations of the fact that it gives an example of why the culture is basically echoing what I'm already feeling as a result of that, and like how do you really necessarily combat that? And I bring up the election, yeah, the results there with the divide between young men and young women there, going a little bit more left and then young men going more right. Not to excuse the Democratic Party, because they're still at fault for the loss that they had. I still put the blame mostly firmly with the Democratic Party and with kind of their strategy and campaign plan. And if they did a little bit of different things there, they probably would have won. And then it was a failure to motivate their base to come out and to vote for them. That was the cause of their downfall, that people just kinda just didn't see anything. They kinda just threw their hands up and went like, "Eh, whatever. I'm just not gonna show up in this election, and I'm just gonna sit this one out." And they kinda lost the apathy there, and they lost the people just sitting at home on the couch. Um, do I don't wanna infantilize the voter too much, because I think the voter also has a responsibility there to be educated maybe on some of the topics and things that they were voting for. And back to that conversation I had with that guy, he also said like he went to Harris rally, a campaign rally, and he was like, "Well, I liked what she was saying. I looked at her policies, and they would obviously benefit me more than Trump's policies, but she still didn't feel like she was speaking to me as a man. So it's like she didn't really offer nothing to me as a man, and she didn't really come into our spaces. She didn't go on the Joe Rogan podcast when she had the opportunity to do so, and that was a kind of a failure on that. Yeah, so you kind of had that there. You
Well,
want to come in?
yeah, and just as that's another issue that I'm really apologies for stepping away. That's another issue I'm really sort of like worried about, where you have these men, these young men who are like, in their 20s. And I'm not talking about like young kids. I'm not talking about like a 10 or 11-year-old who like watches Logan Paul or Andrew Tate and says some like dumb shit. Like that obviously is like, he's a kid. We need to get him off TikTok, or whatever. Um, the issue I have is like we have these men who are like in their 20s and 30s, sometimes even 40s. These are grown men. These are men who know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly what Andrew Tate is saying. They know exactly what the attitude surrounding these sort of figures, Trump, or their attitudes towards women. And there's sort of this, they simultaneously want to be like, men are, like we're not emotional. We're strong men and we have to, be, taken seriously. But at the same time, there's almost this like infantilization of grown men of like, well, they're just confused little boys who are just sad that they don't have a girlfriend. And like, I don't know what else to do. And I'm just lashing out. It's like, at what point, and another thing, um, you'll often see, I think I even had a conversation with someone on Twitter about it. They were like, well, a lot of these guys don't really mean this stuff. They're just kind of like trolling and stuff. But it gets to a point where it's like, at what point, as a grown man, do you take responsibility for yourself and your actions and who you vote for and what you say? Again, that I don't know how old that kid is in that account that you pulled up, the one that tweeted like,
Mhm.
I don't have a girlfriend because of reasons out of my control. But like, how can you simultaneously preach like, traditional masculinity and this idea that men are strong and they are the ones in charge and they should be in charge, and then simultaneously in the same breath say, well, I don't have a girlfriend because the feminists are really mean. It's like, I don't, it's, it's a weird contradiction in their worldview that I don't understand. And again, when it comes down to being like, this has got to be an emotional, it's an overwhelmingly emotional reaction. It's not a logical one. Um,
And
why, if your guys are all these, trad dudes and who are, these are the kind of guys that women really want, then why are Republican conservative dudes struggling so much in the dating market, particularly? Um, but there doesn't seem to be any introspection. There doesn't seem to be any accountability on their part. And so at that point, it's like, I'm not your mom. I'm not your dad. I can't hold your hand. You're a grown man. You have to, I can help you. I can give you empathy, but you have to be the one who takes the first step. But if you're not willing to do that, there's nothing I can do for you.
And, you know, people dissecting like this election loss and then people trying to come up with solutions. It's like, okay, so what can Dems do better, in many years? And then some of the solutions tossed out was like, oh, we need our own. And this also, this conversations came up years before too, a couple years before. If we need our own leftist liberal Andrew Tate, or we need our own Joe Rogan, or we need our own Ben Shapiro, and that's going to help there. Like, what does even a leftist liberal Andrew Tate even look like? Like, I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. Because like, what he's selling is not something that a leftist would sell, right? He's selling easy solutions to complicated problems and selling things that society has already ingrained into, young boys at an early age. So, it's easy for him to sell this image of masculinity with a leftist is trying to present a different view of that and how masculinity has all these different kind of facets to it. What's kind of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the flaw in that argument is that Andrew Tate isn't like, this is sort of like the big sort of um this is the big sort of like what I'm looking for, uh magic trick, if you will, with Andrew Tate. What is Andrew Tate actually offering young men? He is, as I said, he is giving you the A part, where he's like saying, "Hey, I understand where you are coming from. I understand why you're frustrated. I understand that for women, it's you're struggling." And a lot of guys resonate with that. That is what they understand. The male loneliness epidemic. They want to be, men want empathy. They want to be acknowledged as men. That's all well and good. I think that's an important part. But then you look at the B part. Okay, so what is he telling you to do? And all of his advice, well, when he's actually not giving advice, that's another thing with a lot of these, um, whether it's Fresh and Fit or Andrew Tate, they claim to be about men's self improvement. 90% of it's just bitching about women. It isn't actually giving dudes any practical advice. But then when they do give you advice, um, it's either ridiculously unattainable goals. So, like, women aren't going to fuck you unless you make $500,000 a year and have 3 Bugattis. Or they have a very toxic, cold view of relationships. They view relationships as incredibly transactional. Like, a woman will only love you if you provide, and if you stop providing, she will drop you and fuck Chad, So even for the dudes, so even if they say it's like, hey, there's only like a 10% chance that you'll do this, but this is how you do it. Most of the dudes are going to be like, well, that sounds awful. Why would I even want to be around women? You spent you spent
Mm.
90% of your time shitting on women and telling us how women are bad and they're evil and they're greedy and they're not empathetic to men. So why are you even giving me advice on how to enter relationships with women? And that's sort of the thing, is that it's not really about that. It's a lot of these guys have realized that they've monetized the male loneliness epidemic. They're not actually giving solutions. They're just reveling in the black pill, if you will. They're just reveling in the despair. Um,
And you can look up videos people have done of Andrew Tate, bragging about all the money he's gotten from dudes and with
it's
the yeah.
It's
Oh, you
pathetic.
can.
He's open. He knows. I think just recently he said, I'll never do crypto. Crypto's gay. Crypto's a scam. And then now he's out. Now he's doing crypto. It's ridiculous. There have been, and again, it gets to the point where I'm like, guys, I don't like. It's like, well, Andrew Tate, no one else is offering me anything, but then there's also the infantilization of like, well, young guys, we have to show them something better. We have to show them that Andrew Tate's not a good person. It's like, this is well documented, guys. This is like, it's not any secret unless you're like literally 10 years old. The idea that if you're a grown man, the idea that you can look to Andrew Tate as a good person in any capacity is absurd. And so the question is that at what point do we hold these men accountable? At what point do we hold a grown man accountable for, if you're following this guy, if you're standing this guy, I'm going to judge you. Of course I am. I have to. It's ridiculous. I can, like you said, I can show you a dozen videos explaining in depth all the shit he's done, all the scams that he's done, all the contradictions in his worldview and his personal life. But the guys don't care. They just, you know, again, if you're like 10 years old, that's one thing. But if you're 20, 25, 30, there's no excuse. It's absurd. Oh, but sorry, to kind of bring it back. So, sort of like the bait and switch with the whole we need like a leftist Andrew Tate is that no, we don't, because if, say, hypothetically, we did have a quote unquote leftist Andrew Tate, whatever, it's not going to change anything because those men are going to, even if those men flock to that person, it's not offering these men a solution. It's not giving them any practical advice. It's not improving their lives. I would, that actually would be a very interesting poll to do, is to take, if you look at, say, like a follower of like Andrew Tate or Fresh and Fit, if we took a poll of like 100,000 or a couple 100,000 of their viewers or their fans over a 5 to 10 year period, again, I don't want to go like, we don't want to do it too soon, because a lot of dudes will like, it's like a drug. It's like, it's like, oh, you get the hit, it feels good, but then it kind of fades. Over the course of a 5-year period, how much has listening to this guy actually improved your life? And I'm going to venture to guess that 95 to 99% of them are in exactly the same spot they were. And this is going back to Trump. So you're a dude who's 30, you're single, you have no prospects, no skills. Trump was president for 4 years. You were in your early 20s, mid 20s, maybe. What happened? Why didn't your life improve during that period? And it's really scary that I think a lot of dudes are thinking that like, yeah, this is going to change my life, bro. And then 4 years down the line, not only are they going to be in the exact same place that they were, but now it's 4 years later. They've wasted 4 years of their life on nothing. They're in the exact same place they were.
And I'm gonna reference a video. FD Signifier, he did a video about the manosphere. He's done many videos about manosphere, about incels. There, and in one of those videos, he was talking about it and saying that, just talking about the pipeline of how men get into these spaces, of getting into following these red pill spaces and get staying there. And you do have some of them who mostly get in there at a younger age, in their early 20s, late teens, there, and then they kind of mostly leave the space there as they kind of get older, 'cause maybe they have more experience with women, and then they realize, okay, well, all women aren't all bad, and then maybe they leave there. They finally do get a girlfriend, but then you have more of the lifers there, more of the dudes who do stay there until their 40s or 50s, because you have people like Rolio, what's his name, Rolo Tomasi there, who he's in his 60s or something, that guy, and people still follow him. And you've had, pickup artists who've been in the game for decades there, who men have followed him as well. So do you think it's just something that a process of just dudes are just gonna naturally just kind of grow of it? Do you think because of just the economic state of things in the country there, because it doesn't look like it's gonna get that much better, right? It doesn't look like you're not gonna probably make that much more money. You're not gonna have the envisioned dream that people sell to you of, working one job and having a wife and then multiple kids and supporting all that on one check, and then living in the suburbs and having a house and everything like that. You're not gonna live this idealized dream that you're envisioning. Do you think that it's just going to continue, more young men are going to get radicalized there through the kind of red pill spaces there, and they're not going to grow out of it?
Well, it's weird because on one hand, you are correct in the sense that I think a good portion of men who like, they like Andrew Tate or, whatever, they're, in the manosphere, yada yada yada. Eventually what's going to happen is they're really angry, they're not successful with girls, I'm in a bad place, yada yada yada. And eventually what happens with like a lot of these dudes is that eventually they go out, they finally do something. Just they don't even have to give like a lot of effort. They just finally do a little bit of effort. Maybe they, after like a year in the manosphere, they realize, hey, my life hasn't gotten any better. I should do something else. And they meet a nice girl and they realize, hey, all the shit that the red pill dudes told me is really not true, and then they move on with their lives. Um, However, I will say before I get to the second part of your question, on one hand, regardless of the fact that, oh, well, a lot of these dudes will grow out of it, the scary part for me is the fact that, well, at what point does that not really matter? This is something I think that was explored back in the sort of like SJW, anti SJW days of like YouTube, maybe like
Mm.
10 years ago, thereabouts. Where a lot of those YouTubers, they were anti SJW, they were like shitting on trans people and like, libs and yada, yada, yada. A lot of those people have since kind of like, as they've gotten older, they've kind of grown out of it. They've kind of realized, I think Chris Raygun was someone, Hunter Avalon was another, Shoe on Head. These are people who kind of were,
Amazing
they kind
atheist.
of, they kind of seemed like they were aiding to the anti-SJW, but as they got older and matured out of it, they kind of became more like have moderate. Some of them even went like straight to the left when they started to realize, oh wow, a lot of these people are like really bad people, and that's great. But then the question is, it's like, okay, that's fine, but you've also spent the last like 5 years preaching this stuff and pushing this stuff and pushing this ideology. It's great that you're not doing that now, but at like at what point do we say it's like, well, should you be held accountable? Not necessarily like legally or morally, maybe ethically. Are you being held accountable for what you pushed? So again, I agree with you. I think a lot of guys will age out of a lot of manosphere stuff, but the scary part is while that's happening, the damage they're doing is still occurring. Um, Particularly because, to answer the second part of your question, let's say that this is, are you familiar with Daryl Dixon?
Yes, the guy that was famous for going like the KKK and he converted, yeah, KKK members there.
Yeah, so Daryl Dixon, I mean, he's a great man. However, something that really bugs me about his people who talk about him is they seem to imply that, well, Daryl Dixon, he just went to a Klan rally and he talked, and over the years, he's talked 200, I think, of Klan members out of the
Daryl
ideology.
Davis.
Daryl, my apologies. Daryl Dixon's from fucking Walking Dead. That is embarrassing. Oh my God. Fuck. Damn it. You got to clip that or something. Sorry. Anyways, Daryl Davis, my apologies. He, yeah, so he's like talked something like 200 men out of their ideology, which is fantastic. That is great. The issue is not necessarily with him, but people who sort of use him or talk about him and his work is that if you were to ask Daryl, it's like, hey, that's great, but what is what is like the main solution to getting rid of white supremacy? Is it just talking to Klan members? He would never say that. He would say, no, we have to like root it out from the roots, because as fantastic it is that he has converted 200 members out of the ideology, consider of the 200 members that he talked out of it, how many people did they infect? How many people did they speak to? How much hate did they push that made the people who they were around also adopt that ideology that still hold the ideology to this day? And the answer is probably by an extreme margin, way more. I think he even talked. So, like for example, I think he talked one of the grandmasters of the Ku Klux Klan. He eventually made that guy rescind his membership. He made him reconsider his ways, which is fantastic. But unfortunately, that doesn't erase the fact that for probably decades before that, that man was spreading this hateful ideology and likely brought hundreds, if not thousands, if not even more people into that ideology that probably to this day still hold those beliefs. It's not like as soon as that guy renounced his beliefs, everyone else who followed him was like, oh, I guess I'll do the same. Like, unfortunately, that's not how it works. And so, sorry, to bring it back to the master question, is not only is it fearful that the guys that there are some guys that will never age out of it, who will still stay bitter and become more radicalized. But even the guys who do age out of it, while they're in that space, they are still latching on to, they are still spreading this ideology, which is going to spread to more young men. And unfortunately, a good portion of those men, while some of them will age out of it, others won't. And to your point, as the economy gets worse, as time goes on and things still aren't getting better for them, I think the problem's only going to get worse. And this is why the whole Trump thing is such a um, kind of red herring, where people are like, yes, he won. Great. Now what? Like, how is this going to change any facet of your life? How is Trump winning the presidency going to make you ballsy enough to talk to that girl at the bar? It's not.
Yeah. And yeah, so like I said, the root of the problem and like what's the root of the problem? Like if you're trying to source like with the male loneliness epidemic or, with the person described here in the tweet of like, having no prospects, having nothing, anything like that. It's like, well, I mean, hey, if you made, education, college free, maybe people wouldn't go into debt and then more guys would go to college because the number of men going to college is dropping while the number of women going to college is rising. And you would want men and women to incentivize both them to go to college, even though there's some people that are crazy in the right wing space that are so crazy they don't even want women to go to college or obtain higher education when that would be beneficial if you're trying to end because that's a space where most men and women are forced to be together and are gonna probably you're gonna meet a partner there in that situation. Don't having skills. Maybe if you also made trade schools there, you made that more affordable for people. With the ability to, make more money, increase the minimum wage, increase the workers' rights there. You're able to have it where you're not working so long, so many hours, and you're not tired from work, and you're coming home. And you're like, I don't feel like going out. I don't feel like going out. And with things, and because also with going out, things are incredibly expensive. Drinks are expensive. Taking people on dates is expensive. Constantly doing that on a weekly basis can kind of add up for maybe not a result that you're kind of looking for. So again, it all traces back to the root of something that, like you said, Trump isn't really offering that. Like, he's not really probably going to fix all those things. And then people, when you list those things, are saying like, well, if you maybe have this and this can lead to that solution. But people, it seems like sometimes these people want a guarantee. It's like, if these things happen, is it going to be a guarantee that I get a partner? Is it going to be a guarantee that I get a relationship or anything like that? It's like, well, I can't guarantee that. No policy can guarantee that you're going to get a significant other or anything like that. And also kind of the ownership of the hobbies of, it's like more women, are coming into playing video games or into anime and they're going to anime conventions or talking about anime. It's like, this was our thing. You got kind of this ownership some of these dudes have of, this was our thing, you know what I mean? Now all these women coming in here and then we were bullied for so many years, for liking video games and anime. And now all of a sudden these women want to come here and pretend that they like it. All these women in video games now as the lead characters, taking away all the male video game characters. Um, do you think like a lot of that pop culture stuff there of, the women being a lot of female lead characters, which I don't even think like I think it's more now than was before, but it's not like, they try to over exaggerate the problem. Like every game has LGBTQ characters. Every game has a lead character that's black. Every game has a lead character that's a woman. How much do you think that these people it impacts, I guess, other aspects like with the election? How much do you think that really matters to people who really focus on things like that?
Oh, entirely. I'd almost venture to guess that if the same guys who are bitching about like feminism and you know, you know, video games and girls and Star Wars, all those guys who end up voting for Trump, they have absolutely no idea what his policies are. Again, it's just a lashing out. Again, I ask you, let's say everything you say about like woke Hollywood and woke video games is true. How the fuck is Trump does not give a shit about you, bro? He does not care. Trump has probably hasn't played a video game in his entire life. Like, what do you think is going to happen? He's going to go into the video game companies and like clean house. It's very bizarre. Is he going to fire Bob, the Kathleen Kennedy, and like take over Star Wars? He does not care. Nothing is going to happen. Um, but to your initial question, what's so ironic about a lot of the issues guys complain about? So if we go to that tweet, he said, "Well, men have no skills outside of their control." It's like, okay, that's bullshit. But let's say for a second, I'm going to grant you that men are struggling because they can't acquire skills out of their control. What would be the solution? It's like, well, we should probably have education be more affordable so guys can get skills. Okay, that would be fantastic. That sounds like a left-leaning policy. Um, Men don't have partners outside of my control. Again, bullshit. But let's say for a second that that is true. What would be the solution? It's like, well, there should be situations for men and women to interact more and to share hobbies and things they like. It's like, okay, so what would be a good idea is if certain hobbies became more welcoming to women. So that way men and women could enjoy these hobbies together. Or what about, say, the Boy Scouts? One of the big I recently was on another podcast where I raged about this. Um, so several years ago, it was announced the Boy Scouts would start accepting girls. Now, a lot of people freaked out about this. It's like, oh, they're invading a male space, yada yada yada. The issue with that is like it's complete bullshit. What happened was that the Boy Scouts of America and the Girl Scouts of America were two separate organizations. What happened was the Boy Scouts of America, because of dwindling membership, decided to rebrand themselves as, instead of the Boy Scouts of America, as the Scouts of America. And then they welcomed girls in. However, within the Scouts of America, there are still Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. There are still single gender troops within the Scouts of America. I don't know why people, the people who claim to, or you could just Google, like, do the Scouts still have single gender troops? And the answer is yes. So this idea that the Scouts allowing girls in is ruining male spaces is 100% not true. Not only that, but in addition to the Scouts having boys only and girls only Scout troops, they have integrated programs where the girls troops and the boys troops can interact on certain projects. They're not super. Um, see, troops will remain single gender. And I think if you keep reading, there's some place where it says, but there'll be opportunities where the boys troops and the girls troops will intermingle, and oh yeah, there you go, linked troop, where they can interact together and work on projects. So that to me is the gold standard of what we should be doing. We have spaces only for boys where they can interact themselves. We have spaces only for girls where they can act only themselves. And then we have opportunities for those boys and those girls to interact together. That to me, I think, is the gold standard of what we should be doing. That is because if the issue is that men are being raised up sort of isolated, not interacting with women, and they get to age 20 and they have no idea how to even talk to a girl, that is the best solution. To start at a younger age, allow these guys to kind of interact with women, befriend them, get comfortable with them, to not think of women as like fucking aliens. And yet people will push back against this. They'll raise hell about the Boy Scouts. They'll raise hell about women coming into Star Wars or video games, and it's like, what do you want? I don't understand. You're complaining about a problem, and then there's a solution to the problem, and then you vote for the guy who is in direct opposition of that solution. I don't understand.
Um,
Um,
and this is a tweet that kind of also touches on it. Just another example here. It says, and this is a response to a quote tweet here. This is a quote tweet in response to a tweet that says, "Why are Gen Z males the fucking Hitler Youth?" And it says, very easy answer as a Gen Z man. You kept calling us evil because of immutable characteristics, stole our future, denied us our birthright, and corrupted our hobbies. All you had to do was be normal and not be crazed ideologues. The vast majority of this account's interaction age is 19 to 25. I and all the moderators fall within the age bracket, very early 20s. So I ask you this in return. How does it feel to look at the monster you created?
So
This
the
motherfucker turned into
biggest
Sephiroth. Holy shit.
Yeah, the biggest giveaway for that tweet, and this is why you should not take this person seriously whatsoever, and this is the same as the first one, is there is this they will deny this, but just in this tweet, there is an overwhelming a blatant vibe of entitlement. Listen to "Stole our future." What does that mean? What are we talking about? Like, the future is in, like now you could say it's like, "Oh, well, that means, prices are higher, home prices are higher. It's a lot harder to have sort of like to build a family in this economy." I completely agree. That's why the tax credits that the Democrats pushed forth would have been great, but we'll see. And this is where it gets like really sketchy, and kind of like borders on the like, you know, really like we shouldn't even interact with these people. What was the second part of that?
Let me go back to it real quick. Let me pull it up
It
right
was
here.
right after.
Denied us our birthright
Um,
and corrupted our
denied
high.
us,
I don't
denied
even
us
know what that
our.
really means. I don't.
I don't know either, and that is where it's like, hang on. Not only do I think, and it's what's really unfortunate about this is like calling us evil because of immutable characteristics. I would be willing to grant that there is a lot of rhetoric around like, men or white men and yada 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 that I think is really unnecessary. I think it is way overhyped by a lot of these accounts. They sort of like take fringe examples and then they blow them out of proportion. That is something that I would be willing to grant. The corrupting of hobbies, I think it kind of gets weird where it's like the podcast I was on before was sort of like, well, these were male hobbies. It's like it's an activity. You can't gender it. That's weird. You can't say that like video games are a male thing and if girls come in. If you have an issue with like the video game industry in terms of writing or you know structure, that's fine. But the issue isn't women coming in. That's weird. It's weird that you sort of like put it on them. Or sometimes dudes will even say like they took the gym from us. What? Like, what do you mean? There's nothing stopping you. First of all, you don't go to the gym. None of you guys go to the gym. But they're like, women took the gym from us. Like, I don't even know what the hell you're talking about, bro. There's an LA Fitness down the street. Just get a membership. But aside from that, that's sort of like that's the red herring. At the beneath it, sort of like the undercurrent is he kind of gave the game away. Denied us our birthright or stole our future. There is this entitlement of, well, if it wasn't for you guys, I would be a strong man with a wife and loving children, and I would be the man, and I would feel confident, and I would feel like a masculine, and I would be a trad dude, and I'd be awesome. And the truth is that's just not true. It's just you don't have drive, you don't have confidence in yourself, you don't have any skills, you don't have any effort to get skills or improve yourself with women. And so even if everything that you think Trump will do comes true, nothing is going to change for you. It's not going to. Even if women left the gym, even if women like that's another thing too. It's like, okay, let's say women stopped enjoying video games. Let's say Star Wars came back and it was good. Let's say when they banned women from all the gyms in the country. Now what? If anything, it's just fewer instances for you to interact with women. How is this going to fix the underlying problem that you're unsatisfied in your life?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you just said also you had that kind of last line says, "So I asking you in this in return, how does it feel to look at the monster you created there?" That kind of goes,
And
yeah.
this is the other part where this is where it gets like really. This is why like it's almost not even like worth it to talk to these guys. If I'm talking to say like a kid who's like let's say I don't know, it's like 15 or like 15 through 18, and he's really confused, like women are bad, yada yada yada, and I can kind of tell that he is sort of just like he's confused, he's frustrated. This is a guy I can talk to. This is a guy like, hey man, come on, let's talk about this. Let's think of solutions. I think we're just a little confused right now. I understand what you're saying. I want to extend empathy and we'll talk. Okay, that's someone you can reach and try to sort of like, bring him back. This person is clearly they are clearly aware of what they're doing. This person who made this account, he is fully aware of the positions. Like he even says in the end, the monster you've created. He's almost like, he's simultaneously framing himself as sort of like this innocent victim who's been persecuted,
Corrupted.
and I've been kicked down my whole life, and I'm just lashing out emotionally, and I can't do anything, and it's not my fault. But at the same time, he shows complete self-awareness over what he's doing and what he's pushing. That
Mm,
isn't something that so how do I interact with you? What do you want me to do? What solution that you've proposed would make you not feel this way or not agree with this rhetoric? And the answer is there isn't.
yeah.
And that's kind of where, kind of going back to why this conversation is so frustrating, when it's like, um, well, how do we reach young men? What can we do for young men? Well, the answer is it has to be for these young men. Again, I'm willing to do this. We're willing to do this. Are these young men willing to put in the work? Are they willing to actually take these opportunities and um, take advantage of them? And what I fear is that that isn't what these young men want to do. As you put it, and particularly in that little blur about the birthright, they just want people to do it for them. They want a girl to come in. They want to be the guy in the movie who the popular girl finally sees that he's the nice guy and leaves Chad and comes to him, and they marry and happily ever after. They want girls to like them unconditionally. They just want a hug from a girl. It's like, okay, but you need to put in the work. You need to put in the work to improve yourself. Nothing's stopping you from improving your life. Um, well, I should say, sorry, to go back. There are issues that men face, but if you're going to deny complete responsibility over yourself and the autonomy that you hold, I I don't know what to say to these guys.
And
Um,
this
yeah.
is the last tweet I'll bring up there just as an example here. And it says here, leftist women will take a sip from their kill all men mug after attending a feminist lecture on how men are evil and watching a TV show dedicated to demonizing white men and claim that men haven't been alienated. Um, so I think, like Makai was saying, is that on one end, yeah, I mean, when these conversations come up, there is sympathy that people have for what these guys are going through, right? For being lonely, being depressed, um, having feelings of just hopelessness, right? But it's also a failure by them to also recognize, like with the other tweet that I pulled up there. First of all, you recognize you're being radicalized. Like that seems like they're aware they're being radicalized. And I get being online so much is really not good for your brain. Like, because 'cause you're gonna get the most deranged takes from every side there. And, from these guys, I'm not saying that these people that I pull up the tweets I disagree with, that this represents all the men who are lonely and sad, and they all think like this. This is the very extreme here, but, um, at some point there, it's like you also it's like and then when you pull up these people as an example of like, well, look how crazy that some of these people are, like on your side of the aisle, they go like, "Oh, but that's just that person though. That's not me." And but you also have to fight back against that, right? And you have to kind of counter that. And yeah, I don't agree that there was kind of that period of girl boss feminism there, which was kind of like the mid I feel like it's kind of not as prevalent as it was like in the mid 2010s. There of like you had, that type of feminism kind of going on. And yeah, men suck and men are, men are bad people and making jokes at men's expense and everything like that. There was a little bit of that kinda going on, in kind of 2010s, but also at the same time, there's no structural thing, there's no systemic thing that women are doing to, keep men down. And men may say, "Oh, what about the court system and child support?" Or, maybe they'll bring up abortions as an example, as kind of examples of that. But those are also men involved in making those laws as well. That's not just women doing that. There's nothing women doing on a systemic level to oppress men there.
Or it's sort of based, and also this is going back to the sort of contradiction. Women are they'll simultaneously say women are made to stay at home because they're better at like rearing children. It's like, okay, so if you guys get divorced, so the kid should go with the woman, right? Because she's better at that. No, I don't like that. It's like they don't really understand or recognize that the ideology that they're pushing is the source of everything they dislike. Are very similar. Like men are traditional. We have to be stoic, and we have to get up and go to work, and just with no thanks and be the provider. But also, no one cares about men, and they see it as expendable. And it's like, well, why? Because for that viewpoint that you have of men, they're just supposed to be providers, and they like the aesthetic of it. They like the fantasy of the trad man who is the wife adores and the kids love, and he goes out and he sacrifices himself for for his family. But then they'll turn around and say, it's like, well, that sort of ideology is in part why we're in the position that no one cares about men. We see men as expendable. Men see men as expendable. And then when you try to push back on that, it's like, well, how about we try and change that? They're like, no, it's gay, that's feminine. And it gets to a point where I'm like, dude, I don't I don't know what you want me to do. And then even the tweet you posted, it's like, what I'll try to express to men is like, yeah, man, that feminist in the kill all men mug in my lecture, like, first of all, you've never seen that personally. You've never seen that personally. I don't know if anyone has seen that personally. Like, you probably had someone tell you that online, like on Reddit, like, oh, there was a chick in my lecture with a kill all men mug. Like, if you have a picture of that, show it to me. But it's like, it's almost like a very, like, a stereotype that you're kind of perpetuating. But then here, this is like what really bugs me about, like, if we're really like trying to be like strong men and like formidable men, stoic men, let's say like that. Yeah, fuck that chick. She's a bitch. That's stupid. Why would she have that? That's dumb.
Yeah.
Is that really going to rattle you so much that you just give up on life, that you can't go to the gym, that you can't do any? It's like, what kind of man are you? Another thing I try to tell dudes, it's like, well, yeah, like, me too, yada yada yada. It's like, because of that, I can't ask that girl out at the bar, and that way I can't, have a family. And I try to be like nice, but at the same time, I'm like, bro, maybe you shouldn't have children. Maybe you shouldn't be a father. Because imagine, like, you're, as a father, you telling your son, if your son came to you, it's like, hey, dad, should I ask that girl out at the bar? Should I be courageous and show some balls and show some initiative? No, son. You should just sit in the corner and not talk to that pretty girl and just not ever try to improve your life. It's like, what kind of example of masculinity, on the off chance that you found a woman to have a child with, what example of masculinity are you putting forth? Yeah, it's frustrating. It's like, guys, like, I don't want to be the man up guy, but it gets to a point where I'm like, you guys claim you want traditional masculinity, you want to be seen as men, yada yada yada, but you never seem to emulate any of these traits. It's just weak and cowardly.
And then, like I said, failure to kind of recognize the negative impact that men are having on other men. And this is kind of an example of it right here. You already know this clip already.
Oh, hell yeah.
What'd you think? Fuck the woman! Fuck the woman! What? No, wait. We love women. We love women. But not like transgender. Yes, sir. We love everybody. No. Okay, yeah, Mark, reach.
Yeah. I mean,
well, it's a perfect illustration of like what we're talking about before, where, I made the caveat earlier of like, when I'm talking about young men, I'm not talking about like 10-year-olds. Like, even when the kid, when he said, we love women, but not transgenders. If you rewatch the clip, it's very clear that he has no idea what he's even saying. Like, he's almost like just repeating it. We love women, but not transgenders. Like, he has no idea what he's even talking about. He has no idea what transgender is. He has no idea. It's like, just look at his body language. It's just kind of like, right? Like, he's just, because of course he's a 10-year-old kid. He has no idea what he's saying. So I'm not really talking about these kids. These are kids we can be like, yeah, chill. Like, let's talk about this, bro. Like, it's not, you're not like, these kids aren't like bitter old men who are like, meh. These are kids we can reach.
Mhm.
But now think of like the things that were coming out of those kids' mouth. Now think of it as like a 20-year-old or a 25-year-old. At that point, it's like, I'm not going to treat you as like a child. You're a grown man. If you're saying these things, I can't just be like, oh, let me pull you aside and like, pat you on the head and like, it's okay, buddy. Like, you're a grown man, dude. Like, you need to take responsibility for the things that you're saying. It's as if it's like these guys simultaneously want to be taken seriously as men. They want to be like viewed with respect and with like as masculine, traditional archetypes, but simultaneously they want to be called like children. They want to have they want to take no responsibility for what they say and just say whatever they want, and they can always just be like, but I'm a poor little boy who doesn't have a girlfriend. Like, as a dude, I'm 32. It's like it gets to a point where I'm like, dude, I don't even you straight up disgust me. Like, oh my god, take some accountability for yourself.
This also was a clip that went viral here. This is from Hassan. He was on a podcast. Hassan is a pretty big streamer, and this was about just a lot of men leaning right in the radicalization of young men there. I want to also get your opinion on this clip as well. Have you seen this already?
I've seen like the screenshot. I don't think I ever actually watched a clip though.
Let's check it out.
There is a massive amount of right-wing radicalization that has been occurring, especially in younger male spaces. Everything is completely dominated by right-wing politics. If you're a dude under the age of 30 and you have any hobbies whatsoever, whether it's playing video games, whether it's working out, whether it's, I don't know, listening to like a history podcast or whatever, every single facet of that is just completely dominated by center right to, I wouldn't say far right in the same way that it was back in like the 2016 era at the end of like Obama's administration, but like definitely center right to Trumpian right, like openly Trump right, not like genuinely neo-Nazi. That part is quieted down a little bit, but like they're like 90% of the way there for the most part. And that's it. Everything that they see is right-wing sentiment being expressed by individuals that they find charismatic, thought leaders, influencers that they subscribe to. And I think that is some of the reason why you see this movement.
So do you think, how much do you put on liberals, leftists for doing a poor job, I guess, at infiltrating the spaces the way that right wing do? Because I think you see a lot of these. He mentioned video games as an example, and you see a lot of these people who come into the video game space who don't even really know what they're talking about as far as being experts on the video game that they're critiquing so heavily, but they're held up as being like these experts on it. How much responsibility do you put on of like doing a poor job at reaching out to young men?
The thing is like, this is where it gets to sort of like the accountability thing. So like, for example, even as someone who like is like left leaning, liberal, I don't know if I'd say lefty, but like liberal, lefty, left leaning. I thought Anita Sarkeesian was stupid. She like everything she said about video games was dumb as fuck. I think that they're definitely a lot of the pandering to women, like, the girl power stuff in, some Disney, like, the whole girl power scene in Avengers Endgame, that was cringy as fuck. I agree that there is a lot, like, the body positivity stuff where it's like, I can be 400 pounds and healthy. That's stupid. Like, that's going way too far in the other direction. I can agree all of that is stupid. I can agree that's dumb and reductive. But why then would I, like, okay, I can say it's dumb, but then why are we going into the other direction? It's like, well, because that's dumb, I might as well like listen to these right-wing guys who were talking about Jews controlling the world and women are all whores. And it's like, well, wait a minute, hang on. There's this weird, like, it's as if like the right wing, and as Hassan said, I completely agree, there has been a lot of like right-wing infiltration of a lot of these things that should not be political whatsoever. One thing that he pointed out is the fitness for a lot of young men. This one's like really scary, where I've seen in many cases a lot of like fitness content that I've watched. The example I go to is I don't know if you're familiar with Elliot Hulse.
Is that kind of? Is he a light skinned guy or white guy?
He's I know he's kind of light skinned. I don't know if he's black or what, but he had a fitness channel. It was really good, really solid. This is like maybe I want to say like he's been at it for like 10 years. But yeah, his early content was great. It was like all about fitness and lifting. And it's like, all right, cool, yada yada yada. But as time went on,
This guy, right?
he just went completely off. Like now he's like full on crazy MAGA straight. I think he said it flat out. Well, actually, he didn't say it because he's a pussy. He was asked in an interview, should women be able to vote? And he said, I'm going to pass on that question. And it's like, bro, at that point, just say it. Like, what are we like? I'm going to pass. It's like, bro, obviously we know what that means. We know what your views are into that. So why are you even denying it? But it's just so weird. It's like just his 2 most recent uploads on his channel, how to get stronger on a calorie deficit. Cool. Next video, the real reason Western men are fat, sad, and disconnected. And it's like, wait, like what? Like what's going on here? It's like, it's bizarre. And then the question is, it's like, okay, so I see like the right wing, this sort of like these right wing ideologies, making their way into these spaces, video games, movie discourse, yada yada yada. And I'm against that. We shouldn't be for that. We should fight back against that. But there's like this almost like what's the word I'm looking for? Retroactive blame put on leftists. It's like, well, the reason that they're doing that is because it's your fault. It's like, well, hang on, how is it left-leaning people's fault? What that these right-wing guys have come in and sort of saturated the space. It's always like put on the left or lefties, or it's like, well, it's your fault. You're the reason I am following accounts that are like openly racist and anti-Semitic. It's like, I don't think that's true. That's I think you could say is like, are there? Does the left falter in its like messaging towards men and males issues? I think that could be argued. I think we could definitely do better than that. But it's really weird where there's like this blame. It's like, well, because you're not doing that, this is why all these dudes are like going into like, and again, we're not talking like dudes who just like Last of Us is gay. We're talking about dudes that like the Jews have taken over every facet of our government. Commie SJWs are ruining the video game industry in an attempt to destroy masculinity from the inside out. Like, it's gone like, women should not have the right, what was it? Your body, my choice. It is gone like, there's only so much that you can blame on the left. There's only so much that you can say is like, okay, I understand why this dude is flirting with these ideas. But at some point, again, we have to hold these men accountable and have them take responsibility, where it's like, if you're saying this crazy fucking shit, if you're saying this stuff about like women should be subservient, women repeal the 19th Amendment, at some point, this isn't because someone didn't, this isn't because
some feminists on Twitter said all men should die or something like that.
Yeah, and we completely agree that like, yeah, fuck this woman. We can agree with that. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to like whiplash in the other direction. At some point, there has to be an accountability of, okay, this isn't just like, so again, for like, let's take a kid who like says shit like that, like repeal the 19th, or like the commies are taking over video games, or the West has fallen. If everything changed tomorrow, would you be happy? Would you start to like go to the left? Would you start to change your views? And the overwhelming answer for a lot of these guys is no. Because again, as a grown man to another grown man, it's like the two options here are either you are incredibly emotionally vulnerable. You are incredibly impressionable. You are borderline stupid to the point where like you can't tell that all these dudes like Andrew Tate and Trump or Elon Musk are taking complete advantage of you, even though they have openly stated this. Or the other option is that, and we could go with that, but I think that's really condescending. Or the other option is there is a good chunk of this that you genuinely believe, that you feel is correct, that you do feel, that you do support. And I think we kind of keep denying that. I think a lot of people sort of like push that aside. It's like, no, they don't really believe that. It's just because the left doesn't reach out to them. It's because the left abandoned them. It's because the left doesn't do anything for them. It's like, I may have bought that maybe 5 years ago, but it's gotten to the point where I'm like, again, as a grown man, I'm like, we've gotten to the point where I'm like, there's no way you can go this far down the hole and believe the stuff that these guys are saying. Or in order to do so, in order to believe that, you have to strip these grown men, 25, 30 years old. You have to strip them completely of their personal autonomy, their ability to think and make decisions for themselves. The realistic view is that there is a very sizable portion of this rhetoric that a lot of young men really desire, that they actually really want, that they're not just going to like wake up one morning. It's like, actually, you know what? All that stuff about women submitting and repealing the 19th and, you know, traditional values and, you know, anti-trans stuff. I'm just kind of over that. It's like, no, there's something else going on here. I think that is the missing piece of or like, you know, I mentioned earlier, like people they're just trolling. You know, I know they've been on Twitter every day for the last 3 years talking about how the West has fallen and women are whores and modernity is destroying the fabric of America. It's just trolling though. And it gets to a point where it's like, okay, hang on. There's gotta be like a line here. There's gotta be there's gotta be like again, holding accountable.
Yeah. As I guess, how do you parse through like the genuine people that are just got like, you know, like I said, are genuine, just sad and hopeless and lonely, and just kind of they more are not taking that and lashing out, or more just it's all inward, and then the people that are genuinely, you know, racist or, you know, sexist and hate women, and you know, I guess you just got to parse through those to get to those people.
Yeah. And I think the best way to do that, beyond like leftist messaging and everything, the best way to do that is to say, if I'm talking to one of these guys, okay, man, let's talk for 10 minutes. What are 5 things in your life that you don't like about yourself or that you're not happy with? And they list them off. It's like, I'm overweight. I don't have a girlfriend. I don't have any skills, yada, yada, yada. Okay. How about we sign up for a gym membership right now? Hop on, like, let's go. Just call your local gym right now. I'm chilling with you. Let's do it. Well, no, I'm not going to do that. No. Okay. Dating. Let's maybe go tomorrow. Go to the store, grab a new outfit, and take some pictures for your dating profile. No, I'm not doing that bullshit. That's stupid. There's no point to it. And if I'm talking to a dude like that, and he keeps giving me cope, because again, if the solution here is that, well, these guys just want answers. They want their lives improved. It's like, okay, but at some point there has to be a give and take. If I reach my hand out, you have to take it. And if that person is going to refuse to do so, that is when I sort of am like, okay, it's getting to the point where like I don't think this is just you're a desperate person searching for anything you can. I think that there is a piece that, and again, if you're like a 15-year-old kid, that's one thing. If you're 25, there has to be some level of accountability where I have to hold you accountable for the things you say and do, or more importantly, the things you don't do to improve your life.
What about late teens, early 20s, about 18 and like 24, 23?
Yeah, it's weird where it's like it's simultaneously these guys view themselves as like, you know, masculine Avengers who are perfectly logical and like masters of their destiny, but also they're helpless victims to the system that they can't do anything, and even getting a girlfriend is out of my control. It's like, bro, there's gotta be there has to be, and kind of to wrap this back to sort of the theme of what we've been talking about, a lot of these guys retreat into pop culture or consumerism, where they really aren't. And this is kind of what, as as someone who loves movies and TV shows, it's something that I love, but I don't really consider it a part of my identity. Like, granted, I have my YouTube channel. I love doing it. I like it. And if people ask, it's like, yeah, I do YouTube. That's, one of my jobs, quote unquote. But I don't really think of it so much as like my identity. But then you have guys who are like young and they view consumerism, pop culture, as their everything. It is their everything. And this is why people react. Again, this is why you or I might watch a Star Wars show and be like, a bad Star Wars show, and we're like, oh, that was kind of cringy. Yeah, that was bad. Oh well.
Yeah.
And then there's other guys where it's like, you took this away from me. This was mine, and you're taking it away.
You raped my childhood.
Yeah, like what the fuck, bro? Like, what are you talking about? Relax. Chill. And then that is when, sort of like, to go back to it, that's sort of when like the right-wing influence swoops in. They see these dudes who are completely lost and like confused and angry and have nothing, and they're like, you know why that Star Wars show is bad, bro? You want to know why? The feminism, liberalism, trans people, yada yada yada. Yeah, I don't know. I'm in a position right now where I need to do some, I think, assessing of myself, where I'm like, I really want to be one of those people who's like, yeah, man, we should really talk to these young men, like reach out to them and like really like offer the hand. But there's this like gnawing, there's like this gnawing in the back of my mind where it's like, I think the problem is that like we're falling into the trap of so many of these men know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly what they're saying. They believe everything they're saying. They're not just helpless victims confused. They're grown men who are deciding things for themselves. And at some point, we just have to say, I'm holding you accountable for this. There's nothing more I can, unless you're willing to. Or here's a question I would ask, and I think this is a question that if you ever are on Twitter or anyone listening, if you ever come across a person like this is a question I would ask them. Let's say everything that you desire, let's say I were to grant you everything about video games, liberalism, wokeism, yada, yada, yada. Let's say I were to grant you that and actually like want to reach out to you. Would you ever give me an inch? If I gave you an inch, if I gave you a mile, would you ever step towards me on any position of anything you believe? Would you meet me halfway on anything? And I guarantee you the majority of these dudes will say, no, of course not. And at that point,
be that honest, you think?
Well, that's another thing. It's like they said, well, maybe I would, but then you look at their activity, or like you'll hear dudes say like, it's like, this is sort of like the Tim Pool, Dave Rubin grift. It's like, I'm a classical liberal. I believe in leftist policies. I'm a centrist. And then you look at their channels and it's just Biden sucks, Trump rules. And then of course now both of them are being investigated for ties to Russian financial support. Wow, like what a surprise. And again, it gets to a point where it's like, if I'm willing to like meet you halfway, I'm willing to like listen and step in, but you're the one who is not giving. And I see the exact same thing when it comes to Democrats and Republicans. It seems like there's this like weird standard that left-wing people are held to, where it's like, a perfect example was did you see the RNC? I don't think it was the RNC, but it was the Tony
MSG,
guy.
MSG rally, Trump rally.
Yeah,
what's his name? Tommy Hochkick or Hinchclick or whatever the fuck.
The Tony guy. He said like, there's the Puerto Rico joke.
Yeah,
and the floating island of garbage is called Puerto Rico. And And, JD Vance comes out, it's like, everyone's just taking everything, like, too seriously. And then Biden said, it's like, yeah, people who support that shit are, like, garbage. And then Vance is like, this is a disgrace. I can't believe he said that. It's like, there's, like, this weird, like, we almost treat, like, the Republican Party as if they're, like, almost, I don't even know, like, children. Like, they're almost not held accountable. Anything Trump says, that's, I mean, this is, like, where we are, like, there's a dozen things that Trump has done that I think would sink any politician 10 years ago, 10 or 20 years ago. Anything anything Trump has done or said would sink their career to the bottom of the ocean. And yet it's just, everyone just gives him a pass. There's a it's like, I don't know. And then it gets to the point where it's like, okay, if there's this huge double standard and I want to meet you halfway, and I want to give you an inch, if you're not willing to do that reciprocally, if you're like, there's no Republican alive who will ever say anything about, they'll never give an inch on trans issues. They'll never give you an inch on immigration issues. They'll never like, let's come to the table. Actually, you do have some good points. The left, actually, you know what? Maybe we are like spreading misinformation. Maybe those Haitian immigrants weren't actually eating cats and dogs. Maybe Trump did lose the 2020 election. Never. And so at that point, it's like, okay, well then I can't interact with you. That's not how two people having a debate or discussion. It's almost like we're too far gone in that respect. And sadly, I don't really know where to go from here.
And this is the joke, or joke, I should say, right here.
Latinos at tonight. You guys see what I mean? It's wide open. There's so many of them. It's absolutely incredible. Believe it or not, people, I welcome migrants to the United States of America with open arms. And by open arms, I mean like this. It's wild. And these Latinos, they love making babies too. Just know that. They do. They do. There's no pulling out. They don't do that. They come inside, just like they did to our country. There's a lot going on. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico.
I think, so this is like a lot of people will defend this sort of, and granted, you could almost say it's like it's not even Tony's fault for this. There's sort of like a rule in comedy when we're talking about dark humor or edgy jokes. And I think the rule is, and this kind of goes back to the whole like trolling versus like actually meaning it. Edgy jokes and dark humor works when there's a sort of like a shared understanding that everyone who's listening in on the joke understands that it's not true, that they don't actually hold the beliefs. If I make a racist joke right now, you and I probably could laugh at it. But is that because it's like, oh, like he said a racist joke? It's like, well, no, because we've interacted enough to know that when I say that, I'm joking. There is a sort of like a tacit understanding that like we don't actually mean it. We're giving you, we're just like talking shit. But let's say there was a third person with us, and we said like a racist joke or made fun of something, and that person was like, "Yeah, man, totally, like really." And it's like, wait a minute. As soon as we get the vibe that person might actually really believe that, that's where it gets like, hold on. Let's hold on there. Like, we don't chill. So the problem with this is that like, people will say, oh, well, he was just joking. It's like, okay, actually go around the Trump rally and actually ask the people if like what their views are on migrants and immigration. And you'll realize it's not just the people won't say like, oh yeah, he was just joking, Puerto Rico. Yeah. It's like, no, they really should not come here. We don't like that. America first, yada, yada. And that's sort of where we've gotten to. Or even funny enough, I didn't even see that first joke when he said, I am, the line a lot of like Trump people will say is like, well, it's about illegal immigration. We have no problem with migration. But then his first joke was, I wave my hands like this, but he didn't say to illegal immigrants. He said to migrants. There is this it's not just this, it's sort of like a red herring where it's like, oh, we're talking about illegal immigration. But then if you actually talk to people, you'll find that there is actually like a very large anti-immigration sentiment in general. A lot of these people aren't going to be like, no, totally, we should still open our borders to people who come here legally and welcome them with open arms. There is this they kind of latch on to the illegal immigrant aspect of it, but immigration in general is sort of a very looked down upon within the Republican or conservative parties. And so that's kind of why these jokes don't really work, or at least in my view, they don't really come off as dark humor or like, just being edgy, because there's a tacit understanding that like a lot of the people who are listening to this really believe this, truly believe this. Not just like a few bad apples, but like a good portion of the electorate. And so at what point is this, oh, we're just making jokes, we're just being funny, to we're kind of hiding behind humor to kind of say what we really mean, wink, wink, wink. Yeah. Or when Trump says, illegal immigrants are poisoning the blood of our country. Like after someone says something like that, I'm like, I don't even know where. And then that's a perfect example. It's like, you've been calling him, like, why are you always comparing him to Hitler? It's like, well, he said something that was very, very Hitler-y. That was a very, very Hitler-y thing to say.
Like you'll have these people who go on for debates on Piers Morgan, and Piers Morgan will concern troll and go like, well, shouldn't the left take responsibility for the assassination attempts on Trump if you keep calling him Hitler and everything like that? Yet, he can say Democrats are going to ruin the country and are going to destroy the country, and Elon Musk can say
there are schools transing your kids and performing trans surgery in schools. There are Haitian immigrants eating cats and dogs. It's like, it gets to a point where it's like, why isn't, and again, this is the double standard where it's like, it seems like we have to be the people on the left have to be the adults in the room. Our behavior is held to this like gold standard of like no division and reaching across the aisle, while the other side is just like propaganda, just like saying the craziest shit you can imagine, and no one really cares. And the supporters just eat it up, or even if it's proven wrong, it just okay, whatever. He was just talking shit. It's like, if you have a leader like that who basically is never, and that's kind of what Trump represents, I would say, even before maybe like 10 or 20 years ago, even if you were Republican or Democrat, there was still, I would say, a pretty, not fully, but there was a decent amount of mutual standards where if a Republican said something or a Democrat said something fiery or controversial, there was sort of a vibe of both sides where we're like, okay, hold on, let's not go that far. We don't want things to get out of hand. Now I feel like we're in a position where there's like one side of the aisle that just gets a pass on literally everything. Trump will never be held accountable for literally anything he says, any lie he tells, any Hitler-y quote that he quotes, and repeating rumors about Haitian immigrants eating cats and dogs. And so if we have someone who's in power that cannot be held accountable under any circumstances by the people who voted for him, what is that called? I don't know.
Did you see that Apprentice? Did you see that movie?
The movie? No. We'll see if I get around to it. I didn't have any interest, not really because as a matter of like me not liking Trump in general, but just sort of like, it didn't really seem like a very interesting movie. I've heard it was okay. I'll probably get around to it eventually. Oh, did you see? How was it?
It was good. I bring that movie up because the movie basically is about the relationship between Trump has with Roy Cohn, who it's again Jeremy Strong playing another Roy there, but it's about that relationship there. And basically the movie pitches it as like Roy Cohn was basically the mentor to Trump. Like he helped Trump become Trump, the person that we know him as today. And in the movie, there's like a line where he says like, never admit defeat, never say you're wrong, just always posture like you're right and you will be right. Just constantly maintain that. And you see that if you just constantly just, put forth that confidence, that energy that I'm right, even if I'm wrong, people are just going like, oh, well, maybe he is right. And I think that, when initially, like when Tim Walz came onto the campaign as a VP, people praised that pick. And I think that, they started calling Republicans weird. And I think a lot of people liked that. A lot of people liked them fighting back. And then I don't know. I think there's internal reportings that, the people were like, oh, you got to tone that down because that's too divisive and everything like that. You can't say that. But I think the reason also why Dems had such a low turnout is that, people don't feel like this is a party that fights for me. This is people that are going to stand up for me and fight for me. And, that I think that was kind of part of it there. And I think Tim Walz had that ability. It seemed like they kind of muzzled him towards the end. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, I liked it when he called Elon Musk a dipshit. It's like when you skipping around like a dip, like, it was.
He is a dipshit.
Yeah.
He claims to want traditional values. He has like 11 kids with different women who none of them want anything to do with him. It's like he's incredibly insecure. It's just he's he's like that kid in high school who like the kind of like the guy who never got a date in high school who now he thinks he's the alpha, but any like real man will look to the like that's the thing too. I think about any like man in my life who I look up to and see as like a masculine role model. They would be like, this dude's a fucking loser. Like they don't even have to know any context, but if I just showed him the general outline of like his views or like behavior, it's like this dude seems like a fucking. He's like replying to people on Twitter, there's even like he's making sock puppet accounts so he can like defend himself. It's like pathetic. Well, that's sort of like where I get to the point where I'm almost like I almost wonder if because if we're in a position where the sort of like right wing isn't going to ever give us an inch, I do think there has to be a time where the Democrats are just going to be like, we have to fight back. We don't have to be, we can't, not to say we have to go as far. Like, I'm not saying like,
Yeah.
like to say like it's really telling that one of the most effective strategies that the Democrats had was just calling Republicans weird. That is insane to me. That just us saying they're really fucking weird. It was one of the most like effective. It rattled the shit out of the Republicans for whatever reason. That just calling them weird was enough to kind of like get people like, yeah. And then, like you said, people muzzled that, which was like really a bad move. It's like, oh no, let's be more professional. And let's, it's like, no, we have to be able to like you said, you have to show there's a line between reaching across the aisle and being empathetic, but also having a spine and not just being like, people were even talking about, Kamala, and Biden both being like, well, Trump won. Okay, let's welcome to the White House. It's like there's no spine. There's no fight. There's no, fuck this dude. We're gonna get him next time. Fuck these idiots. There's none of that. There's no anger. There's no drive. It's just, and this is in part why I think like Trump himself was successful, but even Bernie in 2016, because he had this like fuck you energy, like fuck the system. And again, this is like where it gets like a bit dodgy, but like even if, like, again, Trump takes it to a whole other level, but even if there are things that are it's more about rhetoric, that is effective, and we have to learn from that. Yeah. But if we're always playing this like playing nice and just being like little, goody two shoes, we're never going to, like you said, not only are we never going to attract people from the other side, but even our own supporters, people who are left-leaning are going to be like, my God, you guys are like weak. There's no energy. You aren't fighting. Like, fight, please.
Yeah. And this was the clip right here. I just want to play it because it's funny.
And that's not a joke. Well, look, I'm not going to waste all the time I'm in. I'm going to talk about his running mate. His running mate, Elon Musk.
Absolute based, bro.
Seriously. Where is Senator Vance after he got asked the simplest question in the world at the debate? Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election? And after 2 weeks, he finally said, no, he didn't. That's where he's been spending his time. But that's it. So, look, Elon's on that stage, jumping around, skipping like a dipshit on these things.
He is.
He was there.
But that's the thing. It's like, I think this is what happened. They muzzled him, like you said, like, oh, well, he has to be professional. Don't call him that. It's like, no, we have to be able to call a spade a spade. I don't know. There's, again, and not only that, if you can't call a spade, when the other side can just lie with impunity and not be held accountable for anything, we have to fight back a little bit. There has to be some give and take. Again, we're not going to go to the point where we're just like lying about immigrants eating cats and dogs, but we have to be able to like have some spine or backbone. But yeah.
And I think the reaction after the election also was like, leftists need their own Trump. They need their own guy. And I was like, well, I mean, you kind of had that in '08 with Obama, who ran economic populist campaign, charming, charismatic guy, great orator as well. And he knows how to deliver a joke. He knows how to deliver a line. You know what I mean? And he did I think a good job there. And I don't like what Obama did in office during his tenure, that he governed like a moderate Republican. But it makes sense why he got there, and he is a great politician in a derogatory sense of everything of that word in that case there. But like with this right here,
The childish nicknames, the crazy conspiracy theories, this weird obsession with crowd sizes.
There was this.
That was great. I mean, that was perfect. I mean, that delivery.
He's professional. He's, he shows that there is a level of professionalism, but also he's willing to like low key be like, fuck you. That's what he's saying there, basically. Like, fuck this dude. Let's go. And I think we need more of that. I think that's what's gonna hopefully, if sorry, I need to run soon, but I think that is what we need. We need to kind of like, you can maintain professionalism while also getting your hands dirty a little bit. You don't have to play nice and be like, okay, because no one respects that, not even your own supporters. And I think that energy is what we need in the future.
And just to wrap up before you go, just to kind of close out, and I think this kind of sums up a lot of what we're saying there. This person says, I can't get a girlfriend because you took away some of the malign social pressures that force women to need men. Is not a political opinion so much as is a patriarchal tantrum, and I don't understand supposedly it's left-wing people who are giving any credence to it politically. If the only way to win 60% of young men to your side is to resonate patriarchal inequalities, to force women to settle for these fucking Joe Rogan dweebs, honest to God, would prefer to go down with the ship. Hearing a political movement announcing they want to make women property again and going, how do we compromise with these people? We don't. We oppose them utterly and totally, coming into consciousness and becoming aware of all of the absolutely brilliant, electric, wonderful women I know in the generations above me who are/were miserable and depressed, tied to absolutely awful men they felt an obligation to try hard to fix. To fix was formative for me. Thank fucking God, most of them felt enabled by the cultural changes in my lifetime and before to free themselves. Absolutely, fuck you for trying to undo this. I think that was what he said there. So I think that
It's basically, to wrap it up, for young men out there, if you, and again, I'm all for being empathetic, but when it comes down to it, the answer, or the sort of like what I have to say to you is, if you feel like you have to restrict women's rights or bodies or their ability to work or vote, if you feel like you have to restrict that in any way in order to be a viable partner, you are 100% the problem. That is something that you need to work on. It's in your control. You just need to have the self-confidence and take accountability for yourself to improve it.
Yeah. That's a great way to close it out. Thank you